Hello and welcome
Hello.
back to Ronald Talks Difficult Literature. And are you ready? You're pouring. Okay. So you can see my co-host JUG is already pouring a beer. What are you pouring there?
Villager
Okay.
from Fort Point, San Francisco.
Oh, that's good stuff. I have a Bitburg or
Uh,
Bitburger because the monster in this story. So we're discussing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but the monster in this story is actually brought into existence in Ingolstadt, which is in Germany. So I thought I'd get a German beer for today, but that's early.
Nice.
So this show is about discussing difficult literature and discussing it in a non-formal situation, like in a pub. So we're having a couple of beers and two old friends discussing literature. I do want to mention that we have another podcast called The Trivial Pursuits of JUG and RTDL. And now you can find that on YouTube at JUG-RTDL. So go look at that. Right now, we're in a series of discussions on a book by Douglas Hofstadter, Gödel Escher Bach. We're going to have 20 of those episodes at least. So we're at episode 4 now.
We're in the thick of it.
So introduce yourself if you want to.
Oh, well, I'm JUG. I'm a retired math teacher, and I'm staying here in Northern California.
Okay. All right. So let's turn the page and talk about Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
Let's do it. Let's turn the page.
Page turned. JUG, what is I know you just read this book recently. What is your previous experience with Frankenstein? What were your preconceived notions before going into the book? And do you find this book difficult in any way?
Okay. So many questions there, and I have so many thoughts. So, of course, everybody knows who Frankenstein is. Everybody's heard of Frankenstein. You know, I grew up with Frankenstein. One of my earliest memories is for Halloween, we would have these cheap plastic masks, and it was either Frankenstein or Dracula or when we were really young, but then later, after all the horror movies came out, it would be Freddy Krueger and, Jason, that type of mask. But
Right.
that's my earliest memory. But and of course, there's some movies that have come out, and he's in the popular culture. The Frankenstein monster. Everybody knows he's green. He has bolts in his neck and head. He's made. These are just all the popular renditions of him. But I have never read the actual book until early last month in July, and I have to say, it really was enjoyable. I I had just read another one of your topics in this podcast, Animal Farm, which is another book I'd never read, and it was very tough reading for a different reason. It's just too real, too much on the nose. But this book, it's a really well woven story. I mean, it's really about not what I thought it was about. It's really about humanity and what are we really? Who are we? That's what I thought. That was difficult for me. But another difficult thing about it is like just picking it up and starting it because it's just one of those. It's like a trope. It's like who would actually read that book because we already know the story, but in fact we do not know the story. I was completely blindsided by the actual words on the page.
So how do we get this story so wrong? How did we get to this point where we all thought we knew who Frankenstein was and what Frankenstein was, so we didn't even bother to read it because it's like a trope? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that actually ties into to what I was just saying about humanity. This is just how we simplify things in our lives. Like we hear one thing and then start believing that, and then it's reinforced, and we don't go to the source. For example, that's it. We don't do our due diligence.
We
Basically, we
already
just
know, and we get
yeah.
surprised by these things.
pleasantly surprised.
Pleasantly, oh yeah, the prose in this book is beautiful, and
Yeah.
some of the themes we'll get into in a minute. But I think part of the reason we get it wrong is because this story was so well told early on. It's told at a very early time before, when people are staging plays, and then eventually cinema comes out. And this story was latched onto and retold and retold. Well, they made, I don't know why, but they made this monster, this hideous thing that doesn't represent what's in the book at all. Now, the monster in the book, which is actually referred to as other things, demons, sometimes I refer to it as Frankenstein's creation, but we can use monster so that we don't get confused. But this is not the way this monster is in the book. Now, he's made from pieces and parts, and he is a little bit hideous, and he knows it himself eventually. But this is the most well-educated, most eloquent speaker you'll ever encounter in literature, I think. So it's great. Go ahead.
And I'm sure we're gonna discuss it. He's so self-reflective of his place in this world, whereas Frankenstein really in the beginning had little to no self-reflection.
So let's do that. That to me is what makes this book difficult. Even when we talk about, we say Frankenstein, we still have in our head this image of this green monster with bolts, in his neck. So we have two characters here, and there are more, but these are the two central characters: Frankenstein, the creator, and Frankenstein's monster, who never gets named, which is interesting. So that's difficult. And then the way this story is told is difficult. So I think this story is basically an epistolary story where it's told through letters. And we hear first of Frankenstein by way of a person that I bet no one can name. I barely can remember it myself. Is a guy named Robert Walton who's going to explore the North Pole, and he encounters the monster. He sees the monster, then he encounters Frankenstein, who's stranded, and he picks Frankenstein up. Frankenstein tells a story, and we'll get through that. But it's just difficult because of that as well.
And Robert Walton is an actual character in this book. He's got ambition. He's actually lonely for a friend, which is resonant today. He's looking for a friend when now, like, it's so hard for people to make friends nowadays,
Yeah.
due to different reasons. But even so, he's heading north. He's on an expedition to the North Pole, basically, to make a discovery. He needs to make his place in the world.
Yeah, and he's a very ambitious young man.
Yeah, I was interested in him, and then he just relates Frankenstein's story, the whole most of the novel.
Yes, and then at the end he becomes part of the action. It's crazy. But I think we'll go through that retelling in a minute. But the person that wrote this story is Mary Shelley, probably the way she's born in London. It's probably Mary Shelley.
Right.
This is crazy. I mean, she was born in the 1700s, late 1700s. She wrote this story at 19 years old. She began writing the story at 19 years old. That in and of itself is crazy. So we need to know a little bit more about who Mary Shelley was. And I'll just go real quickly. Mary Shelley was this highly educated young woman, it turns out. She was born to educated parents in London in 1797. She was born to William Godwin, who was a philosopher. That was her father, and Mary Wollstonecraft, who happened to be a pioneering feminist at the time. This is early on for feminism. So you can imagine the conversations at dinner at their table. The only thing is, this is a plot twist. She really didn't ever have a conversation with her mother. Her mother died 11 days after she was born.
Oh,
So
wow.
she would only known about her mother through secondhand accounts. So her father raised her, and she must have gotten a great education. It must have been well traveled, because this story travels all over Europe into the North Pole through, parts of, it goes all the way up to the Orkneys and in parts of Russia as well. So she was able to describe that beautifully.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But she, at the age of 16, Mary Shelley eloped with a famous poet, Percy Bysshe Shelley. A lot of people know his sonnet Ozymandias. If they don't know it from anything other than the episode of Breaking Bad after that name, Ozymandias. But so she wrote this story. So she was married. She eloped at 16. She eventually married Percy Shelley, and they had 3 children. 2 of them died. And then Percy Shelley died 6 years after their marriage by drowning. So very tragic. But she wrote this before he drowned. She died herself at age 53. So that's who Mary Shelley was. And we want to get into, well, how did she wrote this story? Do you know anything about how that came about?
Well, I remember hearing stories about the origins of Frankenstein, and one of them is that I think it was Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, and
Lord Byron.
Byron.
Mm-hmm.
Byron was there, and I imagine they were in some castle in England in a cold storm, this thunderstorm.
Yeah.
And they were stuck, maybe.
Yeah. So they were in Switzerland. They would, Mary Shelley and Percy went to visit Lord Byron in Switzerland. This story starts in Switzerland whenever it gets told. So that's interesting. So this is 1816. There's also John Polidori, who's an author. And then Mary Shelley's stepsister, Claremont, was there, but she didn't write anything. But there was a challenge by Byron for them to write this horror story. And the challenge came about because it was gloomy weather. There had been a volcanic eruption that year, and this is called the year without a summer. So it was just really dreary weather, and they were basically stuck inside, and they were entertaining themselves through telling these stories. And I think one night they were telling German stories, horror stories, retelling that kind of stuff. And Lord Byron challenged everybody to write their own story. And so this is what Mary Shelley did. She got the idea from the conversations they had previously in that, I don't know if it's a castle, what it was. It's just, I think it was a vacation home. It's in Switzerland.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But they were having conversations about galvanism was a new thing at the time, where they'd go around and have these displays where they would take frog legs, and, they were just learning about electricity, and they would make these frog legs twitch by this electricity. So they were talking about could something bigger be brought to life, animated. And so that's in her own words, that's where that's where she got the idea for the story.
Yeah. Okay. And also, did Frankenstein, in the novel, Frankenstein lost his mother young? Isn't that true? Yeah.
That is
so
true.
There's some relation there, and he is captivated by the new science, and he wants to learn all there is to know. And he's a bright person too. He's smart.
He's ambitious. He and Walton's ambition. He wants to make his mark on the world by going to the expedition to the North Pole. And he wants to, he's imagining the glory he'll get from that. In the same way, Victor Frankenstein, he wants to get his own glory by animating something, a human form.
Right.
So let's do that. Let's just go ahead and say what happened then. The story starts in Switzerland with Victor Frankenstein surrounded by all the people that he loves at home. And we'll name a few of them here in a minute, but the very first thing, there are several things that happen, but his mother dies.
Right.
He's supposed to go to University of Ingolstadt. His mother dies, so he sticks around just for a minute. You have the funeral, and then he goes to Ingolstadt. And Mary Shelley describes this journey to Ingolstadt, where he's eventually going to be joined by his friend. So so at Ingolstadt's where he starts studying everything he can learn about life and death. And so and then he eventually builds this laboratory, and he gathers pieces and parts of human, and he makes this 8-foot
tall
baby human, and he gets it done. He brings this infant, newborn, into consciousness. And this to me is the philosophical part of Mary Shelley that just mesmerizes me. She's dealing with John Locke's tabula rasa, right? Blank slate. she gets this to me so right. And this is where John Locke thinks that people are born with no preconceived notions, whereas, the rationalists like Spinoza, I believe that people were born with a set of morality. Well, her take on it is a tabula rasa, blank slate. And that's exactly what happens here. Frankenstein brings this monster into consciousness and then abandons him. And,
Yeah, because he can't see what he's doing basically while he's doing it. So, like I was saying, he has no self reflection. He's only thinking about his himself, his glory, or his knowledge. Maybe the glory is beside it. I don't know. Everybody wants to be famous, but he's thinking of doing something, and he knows that he can do it because he has the skills
yeah.
to bring a inanimate object to life, and he just in the book he just does it. It just happens. He 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 grabs the parts. He makes a lab, and he does it. He brings his creature to life, and when he sees it, his first reaction is actually horror and
Mhm.
disgust when it comes to life.
Yeah. Instant regret. What he does, it's in a book. I wrote this note down.
Right.
He imagines himself treading in the footsteps of famous scientists and
Yeah.
philosophers of the
Okay. Yeah.
past.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so here's the quote: "So much has been done, far more will I achieve, treading in the footsteps already marked. I will pioneer, unfold the deepest mysteries of creation." So he definitely got
Right.
the
And
magic.
in fact, he was already doing advanced science that was the universities were already reproducing. They were
Yeah,
using his knowledge already. He was that kind of wunderkind or
he
whatever.
was. Yes, yeah. And so he abandons the monster. The monster. There's a whole series of events how this happens, but the monster's away for a couple of years, and during this time period, the monster's learning. And
Right.
the way this monster learns. I think she gets really right too. I mean, who's to say how that can happen? But I think she does a good job of the story.
Yeah.
And he learns through experiences.
And yeah, it's through observing and seeing cause and effect and reactions
Mm.
and he actually learns language and reading and even philosophy. Like I said, he immediately becomes self-reflective, and I
Mhm.
think actually this happens too when because Frankenstein reacts the way he does with disgust and horror at his what he created. It's actually maybe his first moment of self-reflection right
Yeah,
then and there.
he immediately regrets it for sure, but he doesn't
And
realize what he's done yet.
so while he abandons his creature, his creation, I mean, um, he goes into kind of this other mode
Hmm.
of being,
He
which
goes,
yeah, he becomes very depressed and saddened.
yeah, and his friend shows up and hangs out for a while, and then the monster shows back up. Eventually. But the monster, I want to say a little bit about how the monster learns, because he goes and first he
Yeah,
goes out and tries to he's real benevolent for a long time. And then he's mistreated by when people see him, they want to beat him or throw things at him. And he's trying to get food, and he's learned eating berries and nuts and things like that. And then he eventually tries to go into town and get food, and he's mistreated. So he's learning about people that way. Then he goes and inhabits this old hovel where this family lives, and he becomes very attached to his family. They don't know he's there, and he just starts doing not. Then they're a family that are down on their luck, and there's an old blind man and a brother and a sister, and so he watches them and he does nice things for them. He piles up wood outside their door because he knows that takes up a lot of their time, and so they they don't really ever ask any questions about it. But
right.
anyway, he does nice things, and then he listens to them. He learns language by listening, and then he finds these books, and these 3 books are pretty amazing. The ones that he finds, and he reads them he learns to read, and he reads John Milton's Paradise Lost, Plutarch's Lives, the parallel lives of Greeks and Romans, and then the Sorrows of Werther. He learns. I think the Paradise Lost reference is really good here because he lost his innocence there. At the end of his stay at that hovel, he was mistreated by the family, and I think that was basically the last straw. Yeah.
He does realize at that he is like a child. He's childlike, but he's
Hmm.
learning, and he sees he sees a family that's functional. It's an old man and a son and a daughter, right? Their son and a daughter.
Hmm.
So, and old man is blind. So there's prospects there, right? So maybe he
Hmm.
can meet the old man who doesn't actually can see the horror that he is. I mean, he does
Yes,
look. He's an 8 foot monster. We do know that.
he's very scary.
So
He does
he's
that. He goes.
yeah,
That's his idea.
right,
He wants to endear himself to the old man, and he's in there having a conversation with the old man. The old man is into it. He's not afraid of Frankenstein because he can't see him. And
right, right.
Frankenstein's or his monster. See, I do that thing where we call him Frankenstein, but it's Frankenstein's
Frank-
monster. But he can't see him. And Frankenstein's monster is a very likable guy, apparently, and at this time, and very well spoken. Must have been a great conversationalist. But the brother and sister come back, and the brother starts beating this monster who could have just ripped him to shreds, but he doesn't. He leaves. But at that time, in his mind, he's like, that was the breaking point. And this is where he goes and he murders Victor Frankenstein's little brother and frames like the old pair.
Right. Right. So he after I don't think he's caused harm to anybody yet, right? At
Up
this
until
point.
that
So
point.
but once he's rejected by this family, basically, he realizes, he's looking for someone to blame, kind of, and he has some papers from Frankenstein and his clothing. So he looked he probably took a jacket or something because it was cold. But he can see he starts thinking about, okay, Frankenstein, he knows that Frankenstein built him. He knows that. He
Mm-hmm.
created him. He's the creation of Frankenstein. He's being rejected not only by this family, but now he's even more aware of the fact that he's been rejected by his creator. So imagine God disregarding Adam or Adam and Eve. I guess he basically does. But
That's
anyway,
exactly
in
what he
the
says. Yeah.
yeah. So then in his heart is just darkened basically, and
Mm-hmm.
he figures out where Frankenstein is from, and he makes his way that direction to cause all kinds of murder, actually,
Yeah.
and mayhem.
Yeah. So the first murder is young William, and he sets up Justine, who's on trial. So Victor Frankenstein learns of William's death, so he's coming back to Geneva to be with the family and mourn. And at the same time, the Frankenstein's monster has set it up so that Justine will be, he's framed her. He's planted some evidence. It's circumstantial, but it ends up putting her on trial. Well, Victor Frankenstein allows Justine not only to stand trial, but to get convicted and executed. So
Knowing
who's
full
the monster
well
now?
that Yeah, knowing full well that his creation is the one
He,
that killed his brother.
yeah. So there's that. And this is during the time period where the monster is learning. He still hasn't encountered the monster again. He does see him in the distance when he comes up on his way home. He sees the monster in the distance scaling the mountain real quickly. And he puts two and two together and says that he's the one that killed William. So this is when the creator vows vengeance on his creation. That's when Victor Frankenstein decides he's going to get revenge on the monster that he created.
Okay. So let me add this at this
Okay.
point in the book, in the novel. So like I said, it
Mm-hmm.
was the first time I read it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking we're halfway through, and we're at this point now when he finally sees the monster that he created.
Yeah.
Because before he had not seen him.
Hmm.
since he created him. But then he's on his way. He's very sad. His brother's dead. He's going home finally after being depressed for many years. His friend is having a great time in university learning all kinds of stuff, but he's not. He's sad. He goes home and he sees his creation in the distance right when he gets home, and then that's when it clicks that he's the cause of the murder. Now,
Hmm.
before this point, in my mind, I was thinking that does the monster even really exist? Because we haven't seen him say
Yeah.
or do anything.
Okay.
But now at this is actually the point where because maybe it was all in his mind. Maybe Frankenstein was just he was crazy. Maybe he wanted to create so bad that maybe he created a fiction of his imagination. But he it's just an interior battle. But all of his dialogue that he does have, I'm talking about Frankenstein
Hmm.
recounting the story to the captain of the ship is who I don't remember his name anymore is about his sorrow, his pain, his
Hmm.
suffering basically.
Yeah. Up to
So
this
it's
point.
all about him.
Right. So what he does after the funeral, he goes and wanders around the Switzerland area. He goes into this valley near this mountain, and he encounters the monster. The monster's coming at him. And the monster wants to speak with his creator, and they do. They go up to the top of the mountain and in this shack where that the monster's staying in, and they have a conversation. This monster, who now we know is real,
Right.
starts having this eloquent conversation with his creator and relates all this that we were talking about how he learned. This is when we finally learn how he learned. He relates
Right.
all this stuff about how he learned and how he was mistreated, and admits that he did, kill William, and he's going to give Victor Frankenstein a chance to save everybody else that he loves from the same, fate. He'll start taking out his revenge if Frankenstein will create a mate for him. He just wants to be loved by somebody. He's a lot like Walton. Walton wanted somebody, in his case, he just wanted somebody to talk to that was on his level. Well, Frankenstein
Right.
wants that, just somebody to be with. So
Right.
Frankenstein's
Right. Right.
monster wants that. So,
And
but,
and he does use argument and logic
mhm,
to persuade Frankenstein, who does not want to build another creature. He knows how, but he doesn't want to do it because he'll just create another monster like his creation. So he
mhm,
does not want to do that, thinking that I still he's probably um look if you're looking at a something that looks like a monster, but he's speaking to you in a logical manner, it must be it must have been very difficult to say
yeah,
no, but also he does threaten him. And there's threats and there's reasoning.
yeah,
So
but Frankenstein agrees to do it there
yeah,
on the
yeah.
mountain, and he wanders around through London, hanging out with his friend Clerval.
Mhm.
But he eventually goes north to the Orkneys and sets up the shop and starts creating this mate. But he's having, as you say, second thoughts. He's like, well, what if they start having more, and what if they're a danger to society and all kinds of things? And so he decides there in the Orkneys to just destroy this mate. Well, of course, the monster's always checking in and making sure that Frankenstein's doing what he said he's going to do, and he witnesses this destruction of his mate. So
Al-
that's it.
Also, this is another important difference between this Frankenstein and the Frankenstein that a monster that I think about
Hmm.
is that the Frankenstein I think about is the one that goes, ooh, he's walking like
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and he can't speak nor move. Basically,
Mhm.
he
Yeah.
just kind of wobbles around, which is a way of thinking about how if you fit human body parts together, that's might be what happens. But in this case, not only is he he's very stealthy. He's very strong. He's very eloquent, as we can see. He's intelligent, and he can move around. He can climb through mountains. He can survive in the night in the snow. He's actually a superhuman
Mm-hmm.
being.
Ubermensch.
Yes, thank
He
you.
it's totally different than any movie you've ever
Yeah,
seen.
right.
Frankenstein. And the other part about this, I wanted to mention that. So now we have Walton narrating what's been told to him by Victor Frankenstein. And when the conversation with the monster happens, now we have the monster as another level of narration, which I find to
Right.
be interesting. And all this is being related through letters to his sister, who we never meet. She's the ground in this case. If you
Oh,
talk
there
about
you go.
the ground, she's the ground. Uh, we
So,
don't even know anything about her other than she's
it,
his sister.
right, it is interesting, and your T-shirt is right on the point right here. So the narrator is not Frankenstein. It's not the monster. It's not the the sister. It's the captain of this ship, Robert Walton. Is that his name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's this person writing a letter about what he heard from this strange man and then this strange monster that he
Mm-hmm.
he encounters. So it's
Yeah.
the his we have to trust this person's narrative about a second person's narrative who talks about a third person's narrative.
Yeah.
So it's just layers on layers on layers.
Yeah. That's interesting. It reminds me of Wuthering Heights, but I think in
Yeah.
Wuthering Heights, you have a very good case to say that there's an unreliable narrator there. In this one, Mary Shelley goes out of her way. She puts in language that suggests that Walton goes home or goes into his study or whatever every evening and writes down word for word what the events of the day, the stories of the
And
day.
and also the reason I believe the words also is
Mhm.
because I believe that so the key it lands on Frankenstein's word, and I believe that Frankenstein has finally processed everything that's happening and what's going on. He's finally confessing the truth. This is the first time he's saying this to anyone. He never confessed to his father. He never confessed to his wife who doesn't survive. I mean, his wife for one day, right? And
Yeah.
he doesn't confess to his best friend, also dead. I hope I'm not spoiling everything, but everybody dies.
Everybody, pretty much everybody dies. So what happens is Walton's recounting this tale about Frankenstein just telling Walton about it, destroying this mate, and the monster sees it. So then basically the chase is on. They're both the creator and creation have both vowed revenge on each other. So the monster
Right,
goes and
right.
takes his revenge and kills everybody. While Victor Frankenstein's chasing him around. And this is where the story begins. So we look back to the beginning of the story. This is where Walton first sees the monster and picks up the stranded Frankenstein, who's got one dog. He's got a sled. He's stuck on a sliver of ice with one dog left, I think. And so
Mhm.
this is crazy to me. We look back to the beginning, and this is where everything starts. And then Walter encounters Frankenstein. But while Frankenstein's ill, he's almost dying. He's very weak when they pick him up, but he doesn't say anything for a while. And he starts relating his story day by day, and Walton writes it down. They eventually become stuck in the ice, and they're stuck there for a while, and that's when Frankenstein's telling the story. He's getting weaker and weaker, and then the ice thaws, and Walton has learned his lesson from Frankenstein's story about all this ambition leading to trouble. So Walter's like, I'm taking my crew home. We're going back, and
Death
Frank's
and destruction.
yeah, death and destruction. Yeah, Frankenstein's like, no, I have to chase this monster down and
Right,
kill him. I have to get
right.
revenge. And that's basically the last thing he says. He dies there inside the cabin there on this ship. Who's watching outside the window as he's
Oh,
dying?
so like I was saying, this monster demon creation is very stealthy. very aware, is almost like a ghost to
Yeah.
Frankenstein, like a shadow,
Hmm.
which of course implies one of the big themes of this novel, which is that they're actually one and the same person. Frankenstein, monster. Frankenstein is the creator, the monster is the creation. They're always together. At from the moment he built them, they're stuck together. Good, evil, evil, good, creator, creation, human, non-human. What's happening?
Yeah, and you sometimes you don't know which one's more evil. And I think maybe we'll say that at the end. We'll pick who we think's more evil, but
Okay.
they don't. They
Or
both
who's
start
made or who's more decrepit? Who's the
out.
more worse off person?
You're
Or
right, but they start out benevolent creatures, both of them,
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
both vowing to kill each other. And in a bad situation, we're almost to that bad. Well, Frankenstein dies here, and the monster is watching
Mhm.
through the window. And then the monster starts to feel some remorse. He comes in to pay his respects over. He's over the dead body of Frankenstein, and new narrator, or back to the old narrator. This is where
Right.
Walton becomes a part of the action now. So he's on
Mhm.
Walton's ship, and Walton has a conversation with Frankenstein's monster over Frankenstein's dead body. I think that's just brilliant. I mean, I don't know if that's happened before. I know there was 1,001 Nights where you have nested stories and things like that, but this
Right,
is to
right,
be
right.
a little different. Anyway, so
Yeah.
the monster just says, at the end, the monster just telling Walton that you can't imagine my horrors, and he recounts all these murders and he justifies his actions. And he just says, "This: I'm alone in the world. I am the criminal when all humankind sinned against me. You can't hate me more than I hate myself." And then this is where the monster makes his dramatic exit. You want to say anything before we get to the exit, or?
Um about how he comes back at the end full circle, it is good. It's
Mhm.
really good. It's really effective. And you forget, where we are in the story, who's saying what, who's doing what. But then in the end, they're all three in the same room finally.
Finally, yes. And so the monster just he vows to go north and collect his funeral pile and burn himself up upon it. And he bids Walton farewell, and he springs out of the window and disappears into darkness. So that's it. That's how the book ends.
Mhm.
Really good. We'll do a clapping sound there, but we give it 2 thumbs up.
It's a good read.
It is a good read. And normally we'll do pop culture references, but I think there are way too many to count. I mean, just wait till Halloween comes around and look out your door. You'll see somebody dressed as the wrong monster.
Well, can I just make a speculation about the pop culture?
Yeah.
Is is because it's such a difficultly written book, because there are these layers on layers on layers. It's not, you can't just tell that story easily. You can't spread that story. But the story that gets drawn out of it quickly is man uses science to build a monster. The monster is evil. The townspeople, the monster kills somebody either on purpose or accidentally. We don't know. And then, but he wants to just be normal. I guess we don't know because they usually don't talk. Freaking the monster usually doesn't speak. You just have to imagine what he's going through. But then in the end, the townspeople bring up those shovels and what are they called? To,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
they drive him up to some house on a hill and they burn him to
Yeah.
death. That's usually what happens.
That's usually what
It's an
happens. Yeah.
easier story to tell. It's an easier story to tell.
Yeah. Well, so we'll wrap up with final thoughts. But what I want to ask you then, we talked about it. Who's, who's the monster? Really? Who's worse?
Frankenstein is the real monster
I agree.
because
I think Marie Shelley did a masterful job at exploring human behavior through science and through just this nested story. It's really bravo.
and even we didn't really even talk about the actual family that he was watching through the hovel.
Yeah.
But that family had a whole story too,
Hmm.
which talks about their whole situation, which it brings up different parts of humanity too, family, riches, loyalty,
Hmm.
country, nationalism. There's all kinds of things in there.
Yeah. And
And
then we,
the way they travel throughout all of Europe and throughout, it's just really interesting how everything involved. It's this 18th century romanticism, which it really comes through in the book. It's something I don't look for, or I'm more like looking for contemporary type things to read. But this
mhm.
was really, I really enjoyed reading it for
I
sure.
did too. I've been into other groups where people finally read this book after years of it being on their to be read pile, and they always say
Uh,
the same thing. Why did I wait so long? And that's what
yeah.
I'm saying. Why did I wait so long?
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my final thought is this book's written by a 19-year-old who couldn't have. I mean, she did have some life experiences, but at 19, just try to think back to your 19-year-old self and coming up with this foundational gothic horror novel. That's something. It's just a study in sociology, if nothing else. And it asks a couple of questions. What is, I think it asks, what is consciousness? What is an I? It's also what Douglas Hofstadter's doing in our other series in a totally
Exactly.
different way. But it does also, what do we require from ourselves and others? To love, kindness, self-worth, what do we want? And when we don't get those things, what do we do? How do we fall from innocence? And this is what that story is about.
And the just the whole motivation of Frankenstein is a little it's something that she's trying to get at, which is his motivation to do this is scientific self. It's for himself. You want to stand on the shoulders of giants and advance science that way.
Mhm.
And but this is what it could happen. You lose your humanity, basically.
Yes.
The second that the monster was alive, Frankenstein lost his half of himself, I would say, and that half turned over into the monster. Now, I don't want to just bring glib analogies, but isn't this what we're doing with AI right now?
Yes. We're bringing something to life. And we yell at people, have these chat bots or whatever, and
They,
they yell at it, they abuse it. So
mm-hmm.
we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, another one of my favorite science fictions writer is I think his name is Ted Chiang.
Yeah,
He's
that's a
the
good
one
one.
that wrote the Arrival, the
Mhm.
story for Arrival. Anyway, he talks about how whenever AIs actually do become conscious, or there's some kind of consciousness there, that we're going to treat them really badly. Because look at how we treat animals who
Oh,
are
yeah.
conscious.
Mhm.
So why we won't have any qualms treating these things badly.
I think so. And I think Mary Shelley understood that all those years ago, how badly we treat things that we don't consider to be sentient,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right, let's wrap it up. What do you think? Hey, I want you to do
yeah.
this again. I don't know. We can talk about something else sometime down the road, but this has been pretty good. I like this format better than what I've been doing before. We have an umbrella series of podcasts. This one is classic literature, but
Right,
maybe we'll open it up because it's difficult literature. My vision was to do classic works.
right.
We're reading some contemporary science fiction at the moment, and we're going to do a book club on that. So we may do that later on, but let's conclude this episode and close the chapter. We'll close the chapter on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So please send your suggestions for other books that you'd like for us to discuss. And JUG usually tells everybody about how to subscribe and all these other things. And I don't know that part.
push, push the like button and the subscribe button, and tell all your friends. Share the link.
Okay. Double guns out.